The bulk transport waning prosperity drifted through the Kepler 288 system on what should have been a routine transit. Its cargo holds carried nothing of value, no precious metals or advanced technology, no diplomatic envoys or corporate executives. Instead, it carried 48 souls that the galaxy had long since decided were worth very little at all. Rykell pressed his cleaning cloth against the viewport in the crew commons, watching the stars slip past in their familiar patterns. His forearms worked in practiced rhythm, though his mind was elsewhere. 32 years he had worked as a sanitation engineer, a fancy title for janitor, and in that time he had learned that the Sistrani Collective cared very little for those who cleaned their stations and ships. His brown carapace was scarred from years of labor, and the mandibles around his mouth clicked softly as he worked, a nervous habit he had never quite broken. The clicking reminded him of another time, 7 years ago, when a hydraulic press had caught his lower left arm during a station repair. He had dragged himself to the medical bay, mandibles clicking in pain, leaving a trail of ichor behind him. The medical technician had looked at his worker identification and checked something on a screen. The treatment would cost more than Rykell earned in 3 months, not covered under basic maintenance worker provisions. He could pay out of pocket or file a formal request with the collective for exceptional medical funding. Rykell had paid. The request process took minimum 6 months. His arm had healed badly, the joint still clicking when he moved it certain ways. Around him, the other passengers moved through their own routines. There was Pila, a Yuli agricultural worker whose wings had been clipped by debt, legally bound to work off what she owed through 7 more years of labor. 2 Heptari waste processors sat in the corner, their tentacles curled in sleep, having defaulted on housing contracts that would take decades to clear. A family of Kix miners, their crystalline bodies dimmed by exhaustion, traveled to their next assignment in the outer colonies. And there was Marcus Webb, the human. Rykell had watched the human with curiosity over the past 3 days of transit. Humans were rare this far from their expanding colonial sphere, and this one seemed different from the stories. He was not particularly large, perhaps in his mid-30s by human reckoning, with dark skin and close-cropped hair. He worked as a maintenance technician, traveling between contracts. What struck Rykell most was what the human did with his time. Yesterday, Marcus had spent 2 hours helping the ship's overworked engineer repair a malfunctioning air recycler. The engineer had not asked for help. The recycler was not in passenger sections. Marcus had simply noticed the problem and fixed it. When the engineer offered payment from his personal funds, Marcus had waved it off. It was broken. Now it's not. That's enough. This morning, Rykell had watched Marcus show one of the young Kix miners, barely old enough to work, how to repair a cracked datapad. The miner's family could not afford a replacement. Marcus had not just fixed it, he had explained each step, teaching the skill itself. Rykell had worked alongside thousands of beings who hoarded knowledge like currency. Expertise was leverage, advantage, profit. You did not give it away for free. Marcus caught Rykell watching and smiled. He walked over, moving with the easy grace of someone comfortable in low-gravity environments. Rykell, right, how's the viewport coming? Clean, Rykell said, his mandibles clicking once in surprise at being addressed. Always clean, that is the job. Marcus looked out at the stars. 32 years keeping things clean, that's something. Most people never think about the work that goes into keeping a station running, you know. They just expect it to be there. Rykell's mandibles went still. You researched me. You told me yesterday, when I asked what you did. Marcus pulled out a small datapad and showed Rykell the screen. It displayed images of people, dozens of them with names and small notes. I like to remember people. Where they're from, what they do, what they care about. This is my dad, he was a maintenance tech too. Died fixing a coolant leak that would have killed 40 people if he hadn't. Marcus scrolled through more images. This is Maria, she was a teacher on my first colony posting. This is Gyro, we worked together on New Edinburgh. He taught me about pressure systems. They are family, Rykell asked. Some, most are just people who mattered, people who helped me or who I helped. My dad used to say, fix the problem you can see. I guess I started keeping track of the problems. Marcus smiled. And the people. The proximity alarm shattered the quiet routine. Captain Vorn of the Crimson Debt watched the transport vessel's drive sputter and die as his weapons officer maintained the targeting lock. His ship was small, a retrofitted cargo hauler with military-grade weapons bolted to its frame, and his crew numbered only 8. But 8 armed pirates were more than enough for an unarmed transport. Vorn was Kraltek, a species known for their mathematical precision and their rigid sense of honor. He took no pleasure in piracy, which was precisely why he was so poor at it. 6 months ago, he had borrowed heavily from the Tethix syndicate to save his failing shipping business. When the business collapsed anyway, the syndicate had given him a choice: work off the debt through acquisitions, or be sold to a labor camp himself. He thought of his children on the Kraltek homeworld. His daughter was 12, his son was 9. If he went to a labor camp, they would be remanded to state care. The Kraltek state care system was efficient, economically optimized, and utterly soulless. His children would survive, but they would not thrive. They would become another set of statistics in the collective's resource allocation algorithms. This was his 4th seizure, and the previous 3 had been disasters. He had chosen targets poorly, ended up with cargo that was worthless or already claimed by more powerful criminal organizations. This time, he had been certain. A passenger transport meant ransoms. Ransoms meant clean money, no need to fence stolen goods. Simple mathematics. His second-in-command, Kess, moved beside him with the confident swagger of someone who had stopped believing in kindness 15 years ago. Kess was Morlax, a predator species banned from most civilized space, and she carried her past like a weapon. The syndicate had assigned her to Vorn's crew as an enforcer, and Vorn had no authority to refuse. What Vorn did not know was that Kess had once been a hostage herself. At 19, she had been captured by raiders along with 30 others from a mining colony. They had sent ransom demands to the Morlax government, to the mining corporation, to anyone who might pay. No one came. For 6 months, Kess and the others had waited in a cargo hold much like the one on the Crimson Debt, watching hope die by degrees. Eventually, the pirates had simply opened the airlocks on the ones who were too weak to work and sold the rest to labor contractors. Kess had killed her way free 3 years later. She had learned a simple lesson: power was the only thing that mattered. Kindness was a lie people told themselves before reality taught them better. The boarding was efficient. Vorn's crew swept through the waning prosperity with weapons raised, herding the passengers and crew into the main cargo hold. There was no resistance. Why would there be? These were cleaners and laborers, not soldiers. Vorn studied the huddled mass of captives and felt something twist in his chest. They looked terrified. The Yuli was shaking so hard her wings rattled. The Sistrani had all pressed themselves against the far wall, mandibles clicking in distress. This was not the clean mathematical problem he had imagined. These were people, and they were afraid because of him. He forced himself to focus. 48 hostages, multiple species, multiple governments. Even if each paid only a modest ransom, it would be enough to clear a significant portion of his debt, enough to buy back his freedom, to return to his children. He began recording his demands, keeping his voice steady and professional. The first response came from the Sistrani collective within 6 hours. Vorn listened to the message 3 times, certain he had misunderstood. The collective acknowledges receipt of your transmission regarding Sistrani citizens Rykell, Min, Plek, Vess, and Thurn. After careful economic analysis, the collective has determined that the demanded ransom exceeds the calculated lifetime productivity value of these individuals. We consider this matter closed and recommend you seek compensation elsewhere. Please find attached the formal cost-benefit analysis for your records. Vorn opened the attachment. It was a spreadsheet. Rykell's entire life reduced to numbers: 32 years of service, estimated remaining productive years, replacement cost of training a new sanitation engineer, probability of repeat hostage situations if ransom was paid. The final calculation showed that paying the ransom would result in a net loss of 34,000 credits over the next decade. They were abandoning their own citizens, simply writing them off as economic losses. The Heptari Empire did not even bother to respond. The Yuli Commonwealth's response arrived next, and it was somehow worse. They offered 3% of his demanded ransom for their citizen, noting that Pila's debt would need to be transferred to any party taking custody, as the Commonwealth would not forgive contracted labor obligations even in cases of criminal seizure. The Kix colonial administration offered slightly more, but still less than a tenth of what Vorn had demanded, and only if he delivered the family to a specific location deep in contested space. Vorn was Kraltek. He recognized an ambush coordinate when he saw one. Over the next 2 standard days, every response followed the same pattern. Too expensive. Not worth it. Regrettable but unavoidable. One government even offered to pay him if he disposed of their citizens cleanly, saving them the administrative costs of processing deceased worker claims. Kess leaned against the bridge doorway, cleaning her claws with exaggerated care. Told you this was stupid. Should have hit a cargo hauler. At least goods have value. Vorn's hands trembled as he cycled through the responses again. He had been so certain. Every civilization valued its citizens. That was the foundation of society, wasn't it? There is one more, Vorn said, pulling up the manifest. A human, Marcus Webb, maintenance technician traveling on an Earth colonial work visa. Kess snorted. Humans, even worse. They will probably thank you for taking him off their hands. But Vorn had heard stories about humans. Strange stories. They were a young species, barely 2 centuries into their expansion beyond their home system, and they had a reputation for being oddly sentimental. It was worth trying. He composed the message carefully, addressing it to the nearest human colonial administration. 1 hostage, 1 human citizen, reasonable ransom, professional courtesy between spacefaring peoples. The response came in 36 hours, and it was not what Vorn expected. This is Commander Patricia Reeves of the Earth Colonial Administration, Kepler Sector. We have received your transmission regarding passengers aboard the waning Prosperity. Stand by for further communication. Do not harm any individuals aboard that vessel. We are dispatching assets to your location. Vorn read it 3 times. Assets. They were sending assets for a maintenance technician. Kess looked over his shoulder and laughed. They are posturing, trying to look strong. No one crosses half a sector for a contract worker. But Vorn was Kraltek, and Kralteks understood mathematics. He calculated the distance from the nearest human colonial world to their current position. He calculated the fastest possible travel time using standard commercial drives. 36 hours later, a ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 288 system. The Hadley's Resolve was not a warship, at least not officially. Its registration listed it as a corporate security vessel, owned by Sentinel Solutions, a private military contractor based out of the human colony of New Edinburgh. But Vorn had spent enough time studying ship classifications to recognize military-grade engines, reinforced hull plating, and weapon ports that were very much not decorative. The ship held position at the system's edge, 5 light-minutes away. Far enough to be safe from immediate attack, close enough to respond quickly to any change in the situation. The transmission that followed was audio only, the voice calm and professional. This is Captain James Aldrin of the Hadley's Resolve. We're here to negotiate the return of all passengers aboard the waning Prosperity. Please respond with your current status and demands. Vorn felt a strange combination of relief and confusion. They had actually come. Captain Aldrin, this is Captain Vorn of the Crimson Debt. I am pleased to hear from Earth's representatives. However, I think there has been a misunderstanding. My ransom demands were sent to multiple governments. I have only 1 human hostage. There was a pause. When Aldrin spoke again, his tone had not changed, but something in the quality of his voice made Vorn's skin prickle. There's no misunderstanding, Captain Vorn. We're here for all 48 passengers. Now, let's discuss terms. Captain James Aldrin stood on the bridge of the Hadley's Resolve and studied the tactical display. The Crimson Debt was exactly where it had been for the past 4 days, holding position near a small asteroid cluster that provided some cover from long-range scans. Aldrin was 42 years old and had spent 20 of those years in the United Nations Space Force before retiring to private security. He was tall, lean, with gray threading through his dark hair and scars that spoke of combat experience. His crew knew him as fair but demanding, someone who expected excellence because he exemplified it himself. He also had a very specific reputation. He brought people home. Lieutenant Kwon stood at the tactical station, her fingers moving across the holographic controls with practiced ease. She was 28, former Special Operations, and she had joined Aldrin's crew because the pay was exceptional. Right now, though, she was questioning that decision. "Captain, I need to say something," Kwon said quietly. Aldrin nodded. "Go ahead." "This mission, I've run the numbers. The fuel costs alone for this response are going to exceed 200,000 credits. We're pulling resources from colony support operations. There's a medical shipment to Tethys Station that's been delayed because we requisitioned their transport. That shipment includes antibiotics for a respiratory outbreak. 300 colonists, mostly children." Aldrin's jaw tightened. "I'm aware. Are we really going to spend this much to save 48 people we've never met, people who aren't even our citizens, while our own people wait for medicine?" It was a fair question. Aldrin had asked himself the same thing during the 36-hour burn to reach this system. The answer had not come from logic or calculation, it had come from memory. "When I was 19, Aldrin said, I was working in a titanium mine on Titan. Corporate operation, standard labor contract. There was an accident, a collapse. 14 of us trapped in a pocket 300 meters down. The corporation ran the numbers. Rescue operation would cost more than our combined contract values. They sent a message down, said they were sorry, said our families would be compensated according to standard protocols." Kwon was quiet, listening. "My mother sold everything she owned, called in favors from people she barely knew. An independent rescue team came. People who had never met me, who risked their lives because my mother begged them to. Because somewhere along the line, humanity decided that's who we are." Aldrin looked at the tactical display at the 48 life signs aboard the Crimson Debt. "I can't be less than the people who saved me. None of us can. The day we start calculating who deserves rescue is the day we lose what made us worth saving in the first place." "And the children on Tethys Station?" Kwon asked softly. "We'll get their medicine. I've already contacted the Colonial Administration. They're diverting a backup shipment. It'll arrive 4 days late." Aldrin's voice was tight. 4 days, Kwon. Some of those children might die in those 4 days. That's the cost. That's what this really means. We save these 48 people and somewhere else people suffer. There's no clean math. There's only the choice in front of us right now. Chief Engineer Baptiste, a stocky man with dark skin and the patient demeanor of someone who had seen everything, looked up from his console. "Their life support is struggling, Captain. Too many people for a ship that size. They are burning through supplies faster than expected." "How long?" Aldrin asked. 5 days, maybe 6 before it becomes critical." "Good," Aldrin said. "That gives us leverage. Time is not on their side." He opened the communication channel again. "Captain Vorn, let's talk numbers. What's your demand for Marcus Webb?" Vorn's response came quickly. 50,000 credits, standard rate for skilled labor hostage." "Agreed," Aldrin said immediately. "Now let's discuss the others." "The others are not your concern. Captain Vorn, I've been very clear. We're not leaving without all 48 passengers, so you can either negotiate a reasonable settlement for everyone, or we can stay here until your supplies run out and your crew decides they would rather surrender than starve. Your choice." Vorn's voice rose in pitch. "This is not logical. These are not your citizens. Why would you spend resources on aliens who mean nothing to Earth?" Aldrin thought about the children on Tethys Station waiting for medicine, about the choice he had made, about the cost of being who humanity had decided to be. "Because we're here," he said simply. "Now I'm offering 200,000 credits for all 48 hostages, immediate transfer, no tricks. That's more than you'll get from any of their governments combined. Take the deal." There was a long silence. Then, "I need to consult with my crew." The channel closed. Kwon shook her head. "He's not going to take it. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous." "I know," Aldrin said. "Baptiste's status on the Morrison's watch. 6 hours out. The Defiant Star is 12. Bring them both in, quietly, and start working up a breach plan. We might need it." Vorn sat in the cramped captain's quarters of the Crimson Debt and tried to make the mathematics work. 200,000 credits was more than he had expected, more than any single government had offered. It would clear nearly half his debt to the syndicate. Half. He could survive that. He could see his children again, but Kess wanted more. They came all this way, the Morlax said, pacing the small space like a caged predator. That means they want those hostages badly, very badly. We should demand triple, quadruple, make them pay for their sentiment. If we push too hard, they will simply take them, Vorn said. Let them try, Kess's claws flexed. We kill a few hostages, show we are serious. Then they pay what we demand. That is how this works, Vorn, power, not negotiation. I learned that lesson 15 years ago when I was where those workers are now. I waited for someone to save me. No one came, you know why? Because I was not worth saving. None of them are. The humans are fools for even trying. Vorn looked at her. You were a hostage for 6 months. Mining colony raid, 30 of us. Kess's voice was flat, emotionless. We sent messages, we begged. The government said we were economically non-viable. The corporation said the same. After 6 months, the raiders spaced the weak ones and sold the rest. I killed my way free eventually. The lesson was clear. Only power matters. Kindness is a lie. Vorn felt something shift in his understanding. Kess was not cruel by nature. She was cruel by experience. The galaxy had taught her that mercy was weakness, that compassion was foolishness. And now these humans were here, apparently willing to risk everything for people they had never met, and it threatened the entire foundation of what Kess believed. What if they are not fools? Vorn asked quietly. What if they are simply different? Then they will die being different, Kess said. We send them a counteroffer, 600,000 credits, and if they refuse, we start spacing hostages until they understand we are serious. Vorn thought about his children. About the debt that would consume him if this failed, about the Sistrani janitor with 32 years of service whose government had reduced him to a spreadsheet. We send them a counteroffer, Vorn said finally, hating himself. 600,000 credits for all hostages, final offer. And if they refuse, Vorn could not meet Kess's eyes, then we demonstrate we are serious. The transmission reached the Hadley's resolve an hour later. Vorn's voice was steady, but Aldrin could hear the strain beneath it. Captain Aldrin, I appreciate your offer, but it is insufficient. My final demand is 600,000 credits for all 48 passengers. You have 12 hours to respond. After that time, if we have not received confirmation of payment, we will be forced to demonstrate the severity of this situation. The channel closed before Aldrin could respond. He's going to start killing them, Quan said quietly. Aldrin nodded. Baptiste, status on those ships. Morrison's watch just arrived. Defiant Star is 4 hours out. Not good enough. We move with what we have. Aldrin pulled up the tactical display and began marking vectors. Start prepping the breach team. We're going in. What about negotiations? Baptiste asked. We just entered the violent negotiation phase, Aldrin said grimly. Send a message to the Crimson Debt. Tell them we're experiencing a critical systems failure and need to adjust our position. Move us closer slowly. Make it look like we're drifting. Quan raised an eyebrow. The old broken ship routine. It's old because it works. The system's failure on the Hadley's resolve looked entirely convincing. Aldrin had to give credit to his engineering team. They had vented atmosphere in exactly the right pattern, created power fluctuations that read as genuine on external scans, and even managed to list the ship at a realistic angle. The Crimson Debt's crew, already on edge and poorly trained, bought it completely. As the Hadley's resolve drifted closer, ostensibly trying to stabilize its systems, 2 boarding pods detached from its underside, moving silently on minimal thrusters. They were small, radar-absorbent, and in the chaos of a nearby ship apparently dying, easy to miss. Aldrin led one team. Quan led the other. They attached to the Crimson Debt's hull with magnetic clamps, and the cutting began. Breach foam sealed the cuts as they worked, preventing decompression. The entire operation took 4 minutes from attachment to entry. Then everything went wrong. The breach alarm sounded the moment Aldrin's team entered the ship. Not just an alarm, a prepared response. The corridor ahead erupted with weapons fire, forcing Aldrin's team back into defensive positions. It's a trap, Quan's voice came through the comm. They were waiting for us. Vorn had not been as naive as Aldrin hoped. The Kraltek's mathematical mind had calculated the human response, predicted the breach attempt, prepared ambush points. It was not sophisticated, but it was enough. The firefight was brutal in close quarters. Aldrin's team used non-lethal rounds where possible, but the pirates were using live ammunition. 2 of Aldrin's soldiers went down with injuries. The advance stalled. "Captain, we need to pull back," Quan said over the comm. "This isn't working. We're going to lose people." Aldrin crouched behind a bulkhead as weapons fire sparked off the metal above his head. He thought about the hostages in the cargo hold, about the choice to come here at all, about the children on Tethys Station who might die because medicine was delayed. All of it meant nothing if they failed here. "Negative," Aldrin said. "We push forward. Dr. Tanaka, status on the wounded." The ship's medic, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, responded immediately. "Corporal Rivers has a punctured lung. I need to evacuate him now or we're going to lose him." A punctured lung. That meant minutes, not hours. Aldrin looked at his tactical display. They were still 3 corridors away from the cargo hold. If he pulled back to evacuate Rivers, they would lose momentum. The pirates would reinforce. The hostages might be moved or harmed, but if he did not pull back, Rivers would die. "Lieutenant Quan," Aldrin said, "take Rivers and fall back to the pod. Dr. Tanaka, go with them. The rest of us push forward." "Captain," Tanaka began. "That's an order, move." He heard Quan's protest over the comm, but she obeyed. That was what made her a good soldier. Aldrin just hoped it did not make him a bad person. The advance continued without them. Aldrin's reduced team fought corridor by corridor, using breaching charges and shock grenades to clear rooms. They were winning, but slowly, and every minute that passed was another minute Rivers might not have. Finally, they reached the cargo hold. In the hold, Rykell had stopped counting the hours. Time had become meaningless, measured only by fear. The pirates were agitated, moving with nervous energy. One of them, a young Felsen with neural implants, kept staring at the hostages with an expression that made Rykell's mandibles click in distress. Marcus sat with his back against the wall, his posture deceptively relaxed. Over the past 4 days, he had moved through the hostages, checking on injuries, sharing his rations, offering quiet words of encouragement. Now his body language had changed. He was coiled, ready, watching the guards with predatory focus. "They are going to kill someone," whispered Pila, the Yuli worker. Her clipped wings trembled, "to show they are serious." "Not if I can help it," Marcus said softly. "You are one being," Rykell said. "Unarmed. What can you do?" Marcus met his eyes. "Buy time. My people are coming." Then the ship shuddered. Alarms began to wail. The pirates erupted into panicked activity. Vorn burst into the cargo hold, weapon in hand, his mathematical mind racing through probabilities and outcomes. The humans were boarding. His ambush had slowed them but not stopped them. In minutes, maybe less, they would reach this room. He looked at the hostages and felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him. He could surrender now. Take the 200,000 credits and hope it was enough. Or he could do what Kess demanded, what the galaxy expected. Demonstrate that these lives were his to take. His children's faces floated in his mind, their future dependent on his success here. Kess entered behind him. "Do it," she said. "Show them we are serious. Kill one, they will pay then." Vorn's hands shook as he raised his weapon. He selected a target randomly, mathematical probability. The Sistrani janitor, Rykell. "I am sorry," Vorn whispered. Marcus moved. He was fast, faster than Vorn expected a human to be. Marcus lunged forward, putting himself between the weapon and Rykell. Vorn's finger tightened on the trigger reflexively. The shot took Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell hard but rolled, trying to shield Rykell with his own body even as blood spread across his shirt. The cargo hold erupted in chaos. Hostages screamed. Kess raised her own weapon, aiming at the cluster of prisoners. This was her moment, her proof that power was all that mattered. Vorn saw the future unfold with mathematical clarity. Kess would fire. Hostages would die. The humans would storm in. More killing, more blood, all of it meaningless. All of it proving that the galaxy was exactly as cold as everyone believed. And then he thought about Marcus Webb, a human who had just taken a bullet for a Sistrani janitor he had known for 3 days. Vorn's weapon swung toward Kess. "Don't," he said. Kess turned, surprised. "What are you doing?" "Something different," Vorn said. For once in my life, something different. The door exploded inward. Aldrin's team burst through, weapons raised. They found Vorn holding Kess at gunpoint, Marcus bleeding on the floor, and 47 terrified hostages pressed against the walls. Aldrin assessed the situation in seconds. His weapon tracked to Vorn, then to Kess, then back to Vorn. "Put down the weapon, Captain." "She was going to kill them," Vorn said. His voice was shaking. "I could not let her. I could not be that person." "Then don't be," Aldrin said. He holstered his weapon, a gesture of trust that made Quan hiss in protest behind him. "You made a choice just now. A good one, make another. Put down the weapon. Help us get these people to safety." Kess laughed, a bitter sound. "You are all fools, all of you. This is not how the galaxy works." Aldrin looked at her for a long moment. Maybe it's time the galaxy worked differently. He turned to Dr. Tanaka, who had returned with the evacuation team once Rivers was stable. "Get Webb stabilized. Everyone else, start moving the hostages to the pods, quickly and carefully." Vorn lowered his weapon slowly and let it fall to the floor. Kess tensed as if to fight, but Quan was already moving, restraining her with practiced efficiency. As the hostages began filing out, Rykell stopped beside Vorn. The Kraltek could not meet his eyes. "Why?" Rykell asked. "Why did you stop her?" Vorn thought about his children, about the debt he would still carry, about the galaxy's cold mathematics. "Because he was right," Vorn said, nodding toward Marcus being carried out on a stretcher. "That human. He could have stayed quiet, could have let her shoot you, but he did not. And I realized, if a stranger could take a bullet for you, how could I be the one to put you in front of that bullet?" He looked up finally. "I am Kraltek. We value mathematical precision, but I think perhaps we have been calculating with the wrong variables." The transfer took 8 hours. All 48 hostages were moved to the Hadley's Resolve and its sister ships, given medical examinations, food, clean quarters. The captured pirates were secured separately. Aldrin sat in the medical bay, watching Dr. Tanaka work on Marcus Webb. The bullet had been removed, the shoulder repaired with synthetic tissue. Marcus would recover fully, though he would carry a scar. "Corporal Rivers?" Aldrin asked quietly. "Stable," Tanaka said. "It was close. Another 3 minutes and we would have lost him." 3 minutes. The length of time it had taken Aldrin's team to fight through that final corridor. He had gambled Rivers's life on his own ability to move fast enough. It had worked. This time, Quan appeared in the doorway. "Captain, message from Tethys Station. The backup medical shipment arrived. 6 children died before it got there. The colonial administration is citing the delay as a contributing factor. 6 children, real names, real lives reduced to a casualty report. The cost of being here, of saving these 48 people." Aldrin felt the weight of it settle onto his shoulders alongside all the other costs he carried. "Acknowledged," he said quietly. "They're also saying you did the right thing," Quan continued. "The governor herself said, and I quote, 'This is who we are. We save who we can when we can, and we accept that there are no perfect choices.' Captain Aldrin honored our values." Quan paused. "I'm sorry I questioned the mission, sir." "Don't be. You were right to ask. The question matters. The cost is real." Aldrin looked at Marcus, unconscious but stable. "We just have to decide if we can live with being people who calculate who deserves saving. I've made my choice. You'll have to make yours." Quan nodded slowly and left. Rykell found himself in a small but clean cabin, sitting on a bunk that was softer than anything he had slept on in years. A human medic had examined him, treating minor injuries with gentle efficiency. Someone had brought him food, real food, and a beverage called tea. He did not know what to do with any of it. Marcus found him there 2 days later, his shoulder bandaged but moving carefully. "Hey, how are you holding up?" "I do not understand what happened," Rykell said quietly. "My government said I had no value, and then humans came, risked their lives. One of your soldiers nearly died. You were shot. For what? For us." Marcus sat down beside him, wincing slightly at the movement. "Can I tell you something about Earth's history?" Rykell's mandibles clicked in confusion. "If you wish." About 200 years ago, there was a plague on Earth. Started in the southern hemisphere, spread fast, really bad. The northern countries, the wealthy ones, they could have sealed their borders, saved themselves, let the south burn. The math said they should. Marcus looked at his hands. But they didn't. They sent medicine, doctors, supplies. Countries that had been enemies worked together. Millions died anyway, but billions survived because people chose to help instead of calculate. Why? Rykell asked. Because after that, we couldn't forget what it felt like when help came, when someone chose to save you even though it cost them. We built our whole expansion into space around that memory. It's not that we're better than anyone else. It's that we're terrified of becoming the kind of people who could watch someone die because the math said it was acceptable. Marcus smiled. We're not special, Rykell. We're just trying really hard not to be as bad as we could be. Captain Aldrin appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt. Rykell, could we talk for a minute? Rykell stood immediately nervous. Of course, Captain. Aldrin waved him back down. Relax, this isn't formal. I wanted to let you know that you have options. We're taking the Crimson Debt's former hostages to New Edinburgh. Once we're there, we can help you contact the Sistrani Collective and arrange transport home. Or, he paused, or you can request asylum. Earth is always looking for people who want to work hard and build a life. Your experience would be valued. Asylum, Rykell's translator struggled with the word. Protection, a new start, your choice, no pressure. But I wanted you to know that you're not going back to being economically non-viable. Not if you don't want to. Rykell thought about 32 years of cleaning stations for beings who looked through him. He thought about his government's message, the spreadsheet that had calculated his worth and found it wanting. He thought about the human captain who had ordered his crew forward even knowing one of them might die in the attempt. The cost, Rykell said slowly, to rescue us. I heard the medics talking. A soldier nearly died. Children on another world did not receive medicine in time because you came for us. That is true, Aldrin's expression tightened. It's true. Then how can you say this was right? How can any of this be worth that cost? Aldrin sat down, his movements careful and tired. I've thought about that every day since I took this job. Hell, every day since I was 19 and someone paid to pull me out of a collapsed mine. The truth is, Rykell, there is no good math. If I had let you die and sent that medicine on time, 6 children might have lived. But 48 of you would be dead, and what kind of people would we be? The kind who decide some lives matter less than others based on citizenship or location or timing. He shook his head. We tried that on Earth a long time ago. It nearly destroyed us. So now we just try to save everyone we can, and we live with the fact that we can't save everyone. But you choose, Rykell said. You chose us over those children. I chose the crisis in front of me. And yes, somewhere else people paid for that choice. That weight is mine to carry. Aldrin met his eyes. But here's the thing. Tomorrow there will be another crisis. Another choice. And maybe next time we save those children while someone else dies. We can't win by calculation. We can only win by trying, by refusing to accept that anyone is disposable. Rykell's mandibles clicked softly, processing this. I would like to stay, he said quietly. On New Edinburgh, if that is permitted. Aldrin smiled. It's more than permitted. Welcome home, Rykell. The story broke across galactic news networks within days. Humans had staged a rescue operation for 48 low-value workers, spending significant resources for beings their own governments would not ransom. Reaction was mixed. Some called it humanitarian. Others called it performative waste. The Sistrani Collective issued a formal statement noting that humans had overstepped in matters that did not concern them and disrupted efficient resource allocation protocols. 3 weeks after the rescue, Rykell stood in a small apartment on New Edinburgh Station. It had 2 rooms, real furniture, and a window that looked out on the docking bays. He had been offered a position as a sanitation systems specialist with fair pay and full benefits. The human who interviewed him had looked at his resume and said, 32 years of experience. You know these systems better than anyone. We need that expertise. Expertise, not just labor. The word had made his mandibles still in surprise. There was a knock on his door. Marcus Webb stood there holding a flat box. Brought you something. Inside was a chess set, the pieces carved from some kind of earth wood. Marcus set it up on Rykell's small table. Figured I'd teach you. It's a good game. Makes you think about choices and consequences. They played for an hour, Marcus explaining the rules, Rykell asking questions. His mandibles clicked with concentration as he considered each move. Game was complex, full of difficult choices where every action had cascading effects. It is like life, Rykell observed. You cannot know if your choice is correct until many moves later. Exactly, Marcus said. He moved his knight, putting Rykell's king in check. You just make the best choice you can with the information you have and hope it works out. Rykell moved his king to safety. Your captain said something similar about the rescue, about the children who died. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah. That hit all of us pretty hard. Captain Aldrin didn't sleep for 3 days after we got the report, but you know what he did on day 4? He took another hostage recovery job, different sector, different species, because if he stops trying, those 6 deaths become meaningless. But if he keeps going, keeps saving people, then maybe the math balances eventually. Does it balance? I don't know, Marcus admitted. But I'd rather die trying than live knowing I stopped because the cost was too high. 6 months later, Rykell was walking through New Edinburgh's central district when he saw a news broadcast on a public screen. A refugee ship fleeing a war zone had been denied entry to 14 systems. Their fuel was running out, life support failing. Rykell stopped, his mandibles clicking in recognition of the pattern. Then the broadcast showed human ships arriving. Not military vessels, but civilian transports, corporate haulers, even personal craft. Hundreds of them responding to a general call that had gone out across human space. "This is Captain Patricia Chen of the merchant vessel Distant Hope," a voice said over the broadcast. "We've got room for 200 refugees. Send them over. This is the colony ship New Dawn. We're rerouting to pick up anyone who needs transport. This is Private Yacht Wanderer. I can take a family of 5, transmitting docking coordinates." The refugee ship's passengers were transferred over the next 12 hours, all 2,347 of them, not because any single human ship could carry them all, but because hundreds of humans had simply shown up and said, "We have room." Rykell watched the broadcast with something clicking in his chest that felt like hope. Marcus had been right. Humans were not special. They were just people who had decided that this was who they wanted to be, and they kept making that choice even when it was hard. He thought about the apartment behind him, filled with modest possessions. Books gifted by human friends who had asked what he liked to read. The chess set that Marcus brought over once a month when contracts brought him back to New Edinburgh. A commendation from the station administrator for his excellent work, framed on his wall because someone had thought his effort deserved recognition. Rykell no longer felt like a regrettable loss. He felt like someone with value. And across the galaxy, slowly, others were beginning to wonder if perhaps they had been calculating worth with the wrong variables all along. Captain Vorn stood in a human courtroom, waiting for his sentence. The charges were serious: piracy, kidnapping, attempted murder. His debt to the Tethix Syndicate still hung over him like a blade. His children were still in state care on the Kraltech homeworld, and he had failed them completely. Then Captain Aldrin had walked into the courtroom and spoken on his behalf. Vorn made a choice, Aldrin had told the judge. When it mattered most, when he could have killed innocent people to save himself, he chose differently. That choice saved lives, including one of my crew. I'm requesting the court consider rehabilitation over punishment. The judge had looked skeptical but intrigued. What did you have in mind, Captain Aldrin? Vorn is Kraltech. His people are brilliant with mathematical systems. We have a problem with labor exploitation in some of our colonial contracts. Economic structures that trap people in debt, just like what happened to him. We need someone who understands those systems from the inside and has the mathematical background to find the loopholes. Aldrin had looked at Vorn. Someone who knows what it costs to be trapped, who might want to make sure it doesn't happen to others. The sentence had been conditional. 3 years working with Earth's Colonial Labor Board, analyzing and reforming exploitative contract structures. If he succeeded, his debt to the syndicate would be purchased and forgiven by the Earth government. His children could join him on New Edinburgh. Vorn had accepted immediately. Now, 9 months into his work, he sat in an office overlooking the station's main concourse. His screens were filled with contract analysis, mathematical models showing how small changes to labor laws could prevent the kind of debt traps that had destroyed his life. His recommendations had already changed policy on 4 colony worlds. His children arrived next week. He had a home prepared for them. A real home, not state housing. They would attend human schools, make human friends, learned that value was not calculated by productivity alone. Vorn's hands moved across his console, his mathematical mind finding patterns in the data. But now, those patterns served a different purpose. He was fixing problems instead of being crushed by them. Kess sat in a different kind of room. A rehabilitation facility, human-run, where former criminals learned skills and received counseling. She had been angry for the first month, convinced this was some elaborate human trick. But slowly, something had begun to shift. The counselor was a human woman named Dr. Rykell. She was patient, persistent, and maddeningly consistent in her belief that Kess could change. "You were abandoned," Dr. Acaffer had said in their 10th session. "Your government, your society, everyone who should have protected you decided you weren't worth the cost. That trauma shaped you. It doesn't excuse what you did, but it explains it." "Explanations do not matter," Kess had said. "Only power matters." "Then explain something to me," Dr. Acaffer had replied. "Captain Aldrin offered you rescue too. Even after everything you'd done, even after you tried to kill innocent people, he told you that you weren't being left behind. That humans don't leave people behind, even people who hurt them. If only power matters, why would he do that?" Kess had no answer. Now in her 12th session, she finally spoke the words she had been avoiding. "I wanted them to hurt, the hostages. I wanted them to feel what I felt when no one came for me. I wanted to prove that the universe was exactly as cruel as I believed." "And when Captain Aldrin said you could come too," Dr. Acaffer asked gently, "when he offered you the same rescue as everyone else? I thought he was lying. I thought there would be a trick." Kess's claws flexed nervously. "But there was no trick. He meant it, he actually meant it." "What does that change for you?" Kess was quiet for a long time. "Everything," she finally whispered. "It changes everything, because if someone can choose to help even the worst people, then maybe power is not all that matters. Maybe I was wrong." Dr. Acaffer smiled. "That's a good place to start." The Sistrani collective did not change overnight. Bureaucracies rarely did, but small things began to shift. A junior administrator on a remote station, inspired by the story of Rykell's rescue, flagged a cost-benefit analysis that would have denied medical care to a sanitation worker. She overrode the recommendation, citing intangible value factors not captured by standard economic models. Her supervisor questioned the decision. She showed him the report from New Edinburgh, where a Sistrani janitor with 32 years of experience was now training others, sharing knowledge that made systems more efficient, preventing costly failures. "The calculation was incomplete," she said. "Experience has value beyond immediate productivity." The supervisor had approved her override. It was a small thing. One person, one decision. But across the galaxy, similar small things were happening. A Yuli administrator remembered Pila, the worker whose wings had been clipped by debt, and began reviewing debt contracts more carefully. A Heptari engineer read about the rescue and wondered why their empire had not responded and started asking uncomfortable questions. Change would be slow. The galaxy's systems were vast, entrenched, built on centuries of calculating value by economic output, but cracks were forming. On New Edinburgh Station, in a small apartment filled with the evidence of a life rebuilt, Rykell set up his chess board. Marcus was coming for their monthly game. Outside his window, ships came and went, carrying cargo and passengers, building the human sphere one connection at a time. Rykell's mandibles clicked softly, a sound that had once been nervous habit but was now something else. Contentment, perhaps, or hope. He had spent 32 years being invisible, being worthless by calculation, being a regrettable loss. Now he spent his days maintaining systems that kept people safe, teaching younger engineers the skills he had learned, and playing chess with a human who had taken a bullet for him. The galaxy had said he had no value. The humans had disagreed. And in that disagreement, in that refusal to accept the cold mathematics of worth, they had given him something far more precious than economic validation. They had given him a chance to matter. And across human space, on dozens of stations and colonies, other rescued workers were discovering the same thing. They mattered, not because of productivity calculations or economic models, but because humans had decided that everyone deserves that chance. It was not perfect. The costs were real, the choices difficult, the math impossible to balance. 6 children had died on Tethys Station. That weight would never lift from Captain Aldrin's shoulders, but 48 hostages had lived. Hundreds more had been saved in other operations since then. The calculations would never be clean. The choices would never be easy. But humanity had made its decision about who they wanted to be, and they kept making that choice, crisis after crisis, rescue after rescue, one person at a time. In the end, perhaps that was enough. Not to save everyone, not to balance the scales perfectly, but to try, to keep trying, to refuse the comfortable cruelty of calculation and choose the difficult compassion of action. Rykell moved his chess piece, his mandibles clicking in concentration. Outside, the stars turned in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small dramas of living beings. But on New Edinburgh Station and on hundreds of other human worlds, those small dramas continued. People lived. People mattered. People were saved. And that, Rykell thought as Marcus arrived with his usual smile and greeting, made all the difference.